Hey everybody, my name is Steven and I am the host of the Going Somewhere podcast. And before we jump into today's episode, I want to thank you for watching today. If you haven't already, please subscribe so you can stay up to date with every new episode and leave some comments. Let us know what your big takeaways are and how this podcast is impacting you. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful host, Steven. Hey everybody, welcome to the Going Somewhere podcast. Today I am joined by Tim Schurrer. How are you doing, Tim?
I'm doing great. Pumped to be here.
Tim, I'm excited to have you. Thanks just for taking some time to be with us. I actually discovered you when I was listening to Bob Goff's Dream Big podcast. I'm an avid listener of Bob's pod. He's actually my number one dream guest for our podcast, but you were number two. But I was listening to his podcast with you, and as you were talking and sharing your story and sharing your book, it resonated with me, and I knew it was something I would hope to get my audience to be able to hear as well. So thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, Bob's been a huge inspiration for me, and I don't think I would have written that book without his encouragement to just kind of keep adding a little something to it as the days and months went by. So to have somebody like that and who inspires people to dream big things and then go make it happen, I've been someone who's benefited from that message and from him. So he's a really special guy.
That's awesome. Do you mind just kind of giving us a little bit an overview? Who is Tim? What are you doing? Where are you living? Just a little bit about your life.
Yeah, so I live in Nashville. I'm married, and I've got a couple kids. And the fun thing for us, I moved to Nashville about 15 years ago. I had this big dream of being a musician. I thought that was going to be where I'd end up, wanting to go full time into that world. And it's been interesting to see how that's shifted and evolved over the years. And I thought ultimate success was that, like being the guy that everyone knows about and is on stage in front of thousands of people. That was the dream. But it wasn't until I started stepping into roles more and more behind the scenes that I really started to feel a traction in my career. And I think there's a lot of people like that they have this dream or aspiration to do something, and yet they find themselves in a role more behind the scenes. And so there's so many lies that you can believe that maybe I'm not successful or maybe I'm not as good as this next person who may be more visible or higher up on the org chart. And I've just found that me settling into my role and playing a part on the team, whether or not I was the one that everyone really knew about, I mean, that's what I've found a lot of fulfillment doing. And so spent the last 10 years working alongside Donald Miller and building and running that team. And then I left earlier this year to launch out and do my own thing. I wrote this book, and I've started to do keynotes, and I have my own podcast called Build a Winning Team that I've been having a lot of fun hosting. And so that's kind of been the journey for me. And, then the last few weeks has been another unexpected part of the story and adventure. And I got asked to take over as CEO of a nonprofit called David Novak Leadership. And,
Wow.
David's the former CEO of Yum Brands. And that's the parent corporation for KFC, Taco Bell, and Pizza Hut. And, David's known for just being an exceptional leader. And, he built Yum to the success that it was by creating a culture of recognition where everyone felt valued and recognized for the work that they did. And so now I'm running this, nonprofit that is making the world a better place by developing better leaders at every stage in life. So there's stuff for the career and professional, and all the way down to an elementary school program even.
Wow.
And so kind of and everywhere in between. So it's quite the journey for sure.
Very cool. So you have just tons of free time. just filled with free time that you could just do whatever you want. No, that's
I what's great is, I wake up and I just don't I'm so excited about doing all of the work that I get to do. Like it doesn't feel like work, and I feel like I'm constantly pinching myself, just saying, I get paid for this. That this is way too much fun to be a job, but I'm having fun leaning into it, trying to make a positive impact in the world, and building a team of people who are inspired to do that same thing.
Incredible. And I know, The Secret Society of Success, the book that I immediately went and bought after listening to the episode. I think I paused the episode of you and Bob and just like did the buy now on Amazon, and I think I read it in like 2 days. And my
That's
wife
awesome.
was like, "You're reading every night now. We're not watching our shows. Why aren't we watching our shows?" And um, it was really impactful for me. The Secret Society of Success: Stop chasing the spotlight and learn to enjoy your work and life again. I mean, what a title for and subtitle for a book, especially me thinking about young adults, people that are just new into their career or stepping into that place. Can you just give a little overview of the book? What caused you to write it? What it's all about?
So, for a lot of people, the world that we live in today, the message that we hear is to be successful, you have to step into the spotlight, climb the ladder,
Yeah.
be the boss, have fame and money and power. That's what success is. But the journey that I've been on, I've just thought, is it though? Is that the only path? Like that's the only thing that a success journey looks like. And I've discovered this group of people that I call the Secret Society of Success that have shown me, they've shown me a new way to live and a new way to define success. And so in each of the chapters, I try to just offer a paradigm shift for how we can look at success a little bit differently. One of those, for example, I've become friends with this guy named Scott Hamilton, who's an Olympic gold medalist in figure skating. And I used to think that success was this line up and to the right, like
Yeah.
all wins. There's no failure, no challenge, no setback with success, right? But that's not at all true. And, Scott's really taught me that success is about embracing challenges and learning from failure.
Yeah.
And that is what success actually looks like. But I don't think that's a message that gets a whole lot of airtime these days. And so there's just so many other examples in the book of how we can look at success perhaps differently than what we're hearing about in kind of the cultural narrative that's happening right now.
Yeah, for sure. I think just that idea of redefining success is so important. I think, you know, even if we don't think a platform is where success is, I think it's so easy to think of some numerical signal, some possession that we own, neighborhood that we live in, age that we retire at. Like there's something that I think the world or like our culture and society tend to kind of define like this is success. This is the universal success symbol. But what would you say your definition of success has become?
Success to me, after learning all that I've learned from these people that I've been exposed to over the years, success is helping others win. And I
Wow.
would say that is at the heart of what it looks like to live in the way of the secret society. And it's about serving others, being a part of something greater than yourself. But yeah, just to summarize it, I'd say success is helping others win.
Wow. That's like a simple, memorable, but like powerful definition. I think for me, I've kind of come to this point of I've chased that in different seasons of life, or I've thought of that, or like thought of myself as successful for what I was accomplishing or unsuccessful. But a number of years ago, we kind of went through a change where we left a career, a job, a city, family that we really loved. We moved across the country. And, at the time, it was like, whoa, what are we doing? And really, it just kind of came back to this idea of like obedience to what I'm called to, saying yes and continuing to say yes to the path that I felt like we were supposed to be on. And there's a story in the Bible about Abraham, and God just tells him, "Go to the place that I will show you." And that's just kind of like the journey I felt like we've been on as a family. And then it's actually like kind of the idea of the name going somewhere. Like I feel like as young adults, we're on our way somewhere, but oftentimes we don't know, where that is. And I think along the way, it's easy for us in our careers and things to just kind of try to grab hold of what success is. And I think of like the idea of what are we aiming at in our life. And I read, it was early in the book, and it was talking about the first trip to the moon. And if I were to do a quiz question right now, who were the astronauts that went to the moon? We'd all probably come up with two really easily. But you talk about Michael Collins. Can you just talk a little bit about who he is and the significance of him in your work?
Yes. So exactly what you're saying. People know Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. One small step for man, one giant leap for
Yes.
mankind. But until you just said his name out loud, most people have no idea who Michael Collins was, or that there even was a third astronaut on that mission.
Right.
But Michael is the guy that Ubers Neil and Buzz to the moon. Like he brings them up there, drops them off. Those guys then do all the things that they need to do on the moon surface, while he actually stays in the command module. He doesn't get to, he's like all the way at the moon, but doesn't get to get out and
Just like
go
so
to
close.
so close. But what I love about this story, and why I kind of have Michael Collins as this aspirational identity, it's because when he gets back from this mission and sits down with the press, he talks about how content he was to have had one of those three seats. And I think if he were to respond by talking about how disappointed he was to not walk on the moon, and maybe even have a little bit of resentment about that, I think it would have been so natural, so human. We all would have understood. And
Right.
yet, beautiful that he doesn't do that. And I think the question for all of us is, do you have to walk on the moon to be happy?
Right.
Because I think that if there is a cultural narrative, it is no, 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 no. Success is, happiness is being the one everyone is talking about,
Right.
having more followers than your friends, whatever.
Yeah.
But I really love how Michael shows us a different path, a contentment and being a part of something greater than yourself, being content with the seat that you sit in on whatever mission you're involved in. And I think that there is something that all of us can learn from that story. And it's not one that is very popular, but I think it's one that is really impactful if we really were to apply it.
Absolutely. I think even just like the biblical example of like the body, every limb, every part of the body has its function, and they don't replicate each other. Like we need all of those things. And I work at a church right now. That's kind of my context for work. And of course we have our pastor who preaches, and we have our worship leader who sings, and our band and all those things. But I was walking down the hall of our offices the other day, and Ben, who's one of our custodial team members, maintenance, he was just putting together a new conference table and putting together chairs, and he worked on it for hours and hours and hours. And it's one of those things that people will sit on and benefit from for years. But I took the time just for a second. I just took a picture of him because I wanted to remember it, because I wanted to recognize like his role is just as important in what we're doing as anybody else's that we don't see. But I think it takes so much time and effort for us to come to that point. What are some practical things that you would say if somebody is maybe struggling because they don't feel recognized, they don't feel seen, whether that's in their career, in their status of single, married, just in what they're doing right now? What would your practical advice to them be?
Well, let me start with a harsh reality, and it's something that I hate to have to say, but it's just true. And it's, you will never be fully recognized for the work that you do.
Wow.
You won't. So what do we do about that? And I was at this show at the Ryman Auditorium here in Nashville, and it's one of my favorite places to go to a concert. And in this particular show, the lead singer was playing acoustic guitar, standing right in the center of the stage. And then for the next song, he jumped back onto a piano, which was a little bit further back on the stage. And for just a minute, the guy running the main spotlight lost him. And everyone in the audience knew what was going on
Yeah.
because the spotlight was doing like figure eights on the stage. We all knew he was lost. And the lead singer just called him out in a joking kind way. He's like, "Gotta stay with me, bro." And the audience laughed and the show went on. But I just thought, isn't it interesting that it was because of this one mistake that we all paid attention to the guy running the spotlight. But if he would have been doing his job with excellence, he would have become invisible. And for most of us, if we are doing our jobs with excellence, we too may feel invisible. And so I think the first thing here is just to acknowledge the fact that not everything that you do is going to be fully recognized. And the greatest thing that we can do is, one, to fall in love with the work.
Yeah.
Be content doing the work, whether or not we get recognized by anybody else. That's the first thing. But the second is to be people who recognize others for their work. We can't control if people recognize us, but we can be the ones to call out the work that we see that maybe is going on behind the scenes that others aren't noticing or recognizing or calling out. And so a very simple thing to do is just to notice that kind of stuff and to call it out like you did. The example that you gave before I just gave my answer. And so that, I think, is available for all of us. And it could be something as simple as, the other night after dinner, my wife like cleaned up all the dishes when me and the kids were playing, and just to say like, "Hey, thanks for cleaning up the kitchen and doing the dishes." I mean, it seems so simple, but I think this also can start small. I can recognize my kids for, clearing their plate after dinner. It's like, "Hey, buddy, great job. Thanks for putting your plate, on the counter like we want you to." I mean, it can be small, but I also feel like the more we can just call out and recognize people for the work that they do, whether it's at home or in the workplace, I think we all have the potential then to feel a little less alone, a little less invisible. And I think if we do that, we find joy in the journey of doing the work and we learn to recognize other people. I think if we do those two things, we're going to, be making the world a better place around us.
That's so good. You just mentioned like the joy in the journey. I think, to really, and you talk about it in the book, just to enjoy the process, like of whatever it is in the process of even growing up, I think is something worth enjoying. But I know you mentioned it earlier with Scott Hamilton, but just the challenges. I think oftentimes, like when I look back at my life, I don't think even people that climb Mount Everest, they wouldn't probably say like the story that they tell from the rest is when they come across the crest and they look out and they see the view. It's like, I almost died on the way up, and this dude, came and found me in the middle of a snowstorm, and that's the story that we remember. And it's oftentimes those, like you said earlier, those challenges that help us appreciate and even become more grateful for the journey that we're on. And I think that's just such like an important thing. What's a time in your life where there's been a challenge that has really propelled you forward, that's helped you, or a failure that's made you realize successes in the failures as well?
So early on in my career, I wanted to be a musician, and I massively failed at that. I remember my last report that I pulled before I took all of my music down off of iTunes and all these
Oh,
digital
I was
platforms.
just gonna go search for it. So shoot.
Yeah, it's gone. It was a long time ago. My last report, I made $12, and that's not that much money. Like
It's good if it's a
that's not paying your rent money.
it's good if it's a
That's in a
lemonade
month.
stand. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's how much money I made in a month. So as I look at the dream that I had of becoming a full-time musician and the reality of I made $12 in that final month before I pulled everything, you could see that as a failure and get really bummed out by it. But when I think back to, somebody asked me recently, if you could go back and do it all again, what would you do differently? And I actually say I wouldn't change anything, because all of these experiences that I've had, whether it be in trying to be a musician and that not working out, or then working alongside a musician as an artist manager, I did that. I worked at Apple for a few years. I spent some time at Tom's Shoes. I worked with Dawn for a decade.
Yeah.
It's like all of these things have prepared me to now do what I'm doing, and, writing and releasing this book, now stepping into the CEO role with David Novak Leadership. All of these things have prepared me for what I'm doing. So I don't look at it in a way that would be very easy to look at it, which is
Right.
a failure. I look at it as learning lessons that I have been able to kind of accumulate along the way to get me to the place that I am now. And I'm going to be learning for forever, right? Like,
Yes.
there is a joy in the journey of learning new things and trying to get a little bit better every day. I mean, the silver bullet is continuous improvement. Like, a lot of people, I think, in their career or in business, they're looking for a silver bullet. And I just feel like the silver bullet, there is no silver bullet. If there is one, it's continuous improvement, just trying to
Yeah.
get a little bit better. And I feel like that's the journey that I've been on.
That's incredible. What is something, the person that's in kind of this new career, I think a lot of times when you step into a new career, it's a building process. It's something that it's not my dream job yet. This isn't where I want to end. And I think there's that idea of like the ladder, we climb the ladder, but with that person that maybe is in that environment, that there is a way to get ahead in your company. There's a way to kind of get ahead in your industry. Would you have any advice for them to, in regards to the secret society of success and serving others, that you would advise for them?
There's this famous quote by Zig Ziglar, and he says, help enough people get what they want, and ultimately you'll get what you want. And here's the problem that I have with that quote. I don't mind the first part of it, help enough people get what they want. I think that's a great start. Help
Mm-hmm.
others. That's what he's saying.
Yep.
But I don't know if this was his intent. I don't think this was his intention in writing that, but I think that the second part, there's a slippery slope here, which is, and ultimately you'll get what you want. The caution I would have is, are you only helping others so that you will get something in return?
Right.
That it in the end is a self-serving practice, you helping others. I think the healthiest version of that would be help people get what they want, period.
Hmm.
Now, I'm smart enough, wise enough to realize that I probably will get what I'm looking for if I'm helping others. But I think if I'm at my healthiest state, that's not my intention. I'm
Yep.
truly content doing the thing to help somebody else, whether or not I get anything in return. And there's this great book by Adam Grant called Give and Take. And he talks about the difference between givers and takers in the workplace. And a lot of what I'm talking about is, inspired from that book. And I even put a little excerpt of it in my book. But what he's found is givers are the people who win, you know, and givers often are willing to do the thing whether or not they get anything in return. And I think if we're doing that, we're at our best. And you know, whether you're just starting in your career or a little bit down that journey, I think if there is a thing to keep in mind, a thing I wish I would have known 15 years ago, it's help others win, period.
Period. Love it. That's awesome. With with the Secret Society of Success, I think it's I think it's easy to see an external, like, okay, I need to serve others, and but like you're saying, it's something that's inward. I think it's something that is a reframing of how we think and how we see others and see success, and it's something that I think there has to be some internal work. But what would you say if somebody's like, I want to do this, I want to for your terms, be a part of the Secret Society of Success? Like, what are some practical things that you would say?
Every day we get to choose if we are going to live in the way of the secret society, which would be a step in the right direction, or if we kind of fall victim to what I call the spotlight mindset, which is something I define as an unhealthy desire for attention and recognition.
Hmm.
And, you know, it's kind of like when people want to be like Jesus, they don't wake up one day and you're like, nailed it. I did it. Great news, guys. You know, the reality is every day we are up against decisions which either move us in that direction or away from that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're talking about here, which is learning to live in the tension between our highest aspirations of helping others win and serving others and not minding if you get the credit or the recognition. That's what it looks like to live in the way of the secret society. But there are going to be things that come up for you today that will probably pull you back towards the more self-serving mindset, demanding attention and recognition.
Yeah.
That's, I think, the thing that we're up against. And so if you want to know what it looks like to live in the way of the secret society, I think it's just being self-aware in certain situations and trying to just take steps in that direction more today than you did yesterday. So there is no one thing, no silver bullet in this either. It's just that same idea, continuous improvement, trying to get a little bit better, trying to have your default response to some of these challenges or things that you're up against or temptations to make it about yourself, to just try to learn and get a little bit better and a little bit more humble, a little bit more generous. I think that is the opportunity for all of us.
Awesome. How has faith played a role in your life and in this idea and this concept coming to life for you?
The book was written with more of a faith neutral context, just because I knew that in the business space, you're going to have the opportunity to reach a different audience if you're not limited to just speaking from a Christian viewpoint. And yet, if I think about what it looks like to be in the secret society, you know, I keep using this phrase like help others win. Well, what I'm really talking about is it's just another phrase to say serve others, which is just another phrase to say be more like Jesus. So here I have this book written about, you know, defining success a little bit differently and pursuing a version of success in your career that looks a little bit different from maybe what culture is telling us success is, all the while the foundation of that being serving others and helping others. And so that's how faith has played out for me in, you know, in my life, but also what I hope other people are inspired to show up as in their lives and their careers as well.
So good. So good. Hey, one last question I like to ask all the guests, but what's one piece of advice you would give to your 20-year-old self? And where were you at that time to give this the context?
When I was 20, I was my sophomore year of college at a community college in Kansas City, and I think I've kind of already said some of this, but that is this one lesson, like help others win, is the lesson that I just keep coming back to, because I was wanting to be the musician. I was, dreaming of my life as a famous musician, and everything was about me. And I just wish I would have been paying a little bit more attention to the challenges that other people were up against, and, asking, how can I help? What can I
Yeah.
do for you? And I heard this guy, Andy Stanley, speak at an event a few years ago. And, he talks about, if we want to find our purpose, it's so easy to ask questions like, why am I here? And, we live in this very what's in it for me culture and world. But he says, here's the question you need to ask instead: who am I here for?
Hmm.
And what I love about that question is we have the ability then to bring our skills, our talents, our abilities, all of our gifts. We get to bring that to the table and do our thing, but it puts us into a headspace and in a posture of serving others, helping
Yeah.
somebody else. And I think that's it. That's the opportunity for us to think, who am I here for? And if there's been a North Star for me as I was writing this book, and what I know will be a North Star for me moving forward, it's this quote by Albert Schweitzer. And he says, I don't know what your destiny will be. Some of you will perhaps occupy remarkable positions. Perhaps some of you will become famous by your pens or as artists. But I know one thing: the only ones among you who will be really happy are those who have sought and found how to serve.
Hmm.
And I think that's it, right? So may we
Yeah.
be the people who define success a little bit differently, who ask, who am I here for? Who look at our challenges and our setbacks as opportunities to learn and improve, and also just to be the people who help others win, and let that be the motivation behind all that we do. And to do that with help others win, period. Right? I think if we do that, we're going to be on a much better path.
So good. Thanks so much, Tim. Thanks for your time. Thanks for just spending some time with me. And I know our audience is going to benefit from you and all the wisdom that you've shared. And my encouragement to everybody listening, watching, get the book, Secret Society of Success by Tim Schurrer. I just appreciate your vulnerability in the book, and just you telling your story, of your musical career. I think it's relatable. We all have those things that we just don't want to give up, but thanks so much for your time, Tim.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. It's me again. You made it to the end of an episode. Why not start another one? There's more just like it on the Going Somewhere podcast YouTube channel. Click one of the videos that you see right now to get all the latest, and there's a button in the middle. Click it to subscribe. We'll see you next time. Stay up to date on everything Going Somewhere podcast. We love you.